Hello, myself Sunil Ramakrishnan, and here basically it's a 216 topic that is of the formula. This is basically the formula part. Formula is one word, and that basically have basically which basically has created 216 part. So here basically we are discussing that each and every object basically are connected with the set of power supply, and which basically are connected with the each and every uh, objects basically. You can say. For example, one person told that that building basically automatically got fall down. That building basically automatically got fall down. So that is basically connected with the power supply. That is subscription plan data basically. That is by default. But World Bank is telling that we basically have passed the subscription plan data. Rest of thing the nuclear power company and the energy company of that country basically is handling, and each and every city basically have the power plant. So they are basically handling this all this thing. So we can't basically handle each and everything, right? We are basically also human. We can't handle each and everything basically. So we have, that's why basically we are just passing the subscription plan data, and rest of thing is basically controlled by the energy basically company and power company. So here basically the blame basically came to whom basically by default. By default the blame was basically to the power company only. So like this, assume that whole world basically is having power supply company, and the World Bank basically is passing the power supply data to each and every power company. And if by chance in world basically the instability happens, then basically by default the power company basically will be responsible. But here ultimately what happened? Ultimately the thing has happened is the world basically has suffered, and in world basically the World Bank is also staying. So by default they are also going to suffer. That is by default, right? Because they are also staying in earth planet. They are not basically staying in satellites, or they are not staying in the sky, they are not staying in the universe, that they are not going to suffer. So in earth planet basically who are is going to stay, they are basically going to suffer. For example, assume that one country basically suddenly got disappeared. Assume that we will take each and every condition basically, the disaster, most disaster basically will happen in this world, and what are the effect basically going to happen in universe. Assume that one country basically land size is around 800 kilometer, just taking as an example. In 800 kilometer is just basically one or two city, but then also basically I'm telling that it's one country. Suddenly basically that country got disappeared, and entire land basically got disappeared. Entire land basically got disappeared suddenly. And there basically there were around 4 to 5 power companies basically, and one nuclear plant basically was there. Sorry, 2 to 3 nuclear plant basically was there, because according to the kilometers basically the nuclear plant basically are setted, because the energy basically energy basically control that basically depends upon the kilometers. So for assume that there are 2 to 3 nuclear plant, and around more than 15 to 20 power company basically in that country. So like that, the entire country got disappeared. So here who will be responsible? Because that country basically has disappeared. That means it's very bad news for our planet. It's very bad news for our planet that entire country basically got disappeared, and that basically the land only basically got disappeared. Sometimes basically there are many city basically who gets into the water suddenly, and they basically comes out from the water also basically. I will take one example. Basically this was actually told by the Bollywood person. In Italy basically there is one city basically that basically goes into the water. Entire city basically goes into the water, and no, you can't see a single building also in that city. There people are also sleeping. The people are also basically sleeping. Morning basically, the rule is basically nobody is supposed to get out from the house. They get sleeps. The power company basically says that we basically give the sleeping dose to them, so that basically they will sleep. So just see basically how dangerous the world is connected, and how basically the world knows that anything can happen. So that's why basically we have to clear with everything. So for assume that that city basically is created for this only. So just see the how dangerous world is. This basically Bollywood was basically told to me, and Bollywood people told that they basically has got this news from one of the news agency of the Italy. So they told that one city is there that basically suddenly get disappeared. Basically the night, assume that the time is 12 o'clock, and from 12 o'clock the morning 5 o'clock the city basically is underwater, and entire people basically are inside the house only. Water also basically comes inside the house. Water also basically comes inside the house. Water also basically comes inside the house, and then basically the water automatically get disappeared, and people also basically does not happen to, not a single people basically get died there. Natural die basically might be possible, natural death basically might be possible, but with the help of the water basically nobody dies there, because entire water is basically fully covered with the water. Entire house is basically inside the house also water is there. And when basically the morning the entire house is clean also, and everything is clean also. So water only basically clears the each and every house also. The water also basically clears each and every house also. So how might be the bed of their Italy, that place, everything. So this was basically told by one of the person. Basically, he was basically not able to believe this. Then he told that basically the Earth Planet group, basically that are the nuclear power company, they told that we have to do each and every experiments. So this is basically one of the part of the experiment, and they all are basically the human clones, which are basically controlled by the one of the company of that is basically the software company. That basically name basically he has not told that, because like this there are many experiments which is ongoing in the world, which is so each and every city basically is connected with the experiments. That also basically he told. He told that Bangalore is basically connected with one of the experiment. Vadodara city is connected with one of the experiment. Entire Mumbai is connected with one of the experiment. Entire Delhi is connected with one of the experiment. Like this, basically the whole world is basically entire cities are connected with the experiments. So he told that basically, are you sure you are telling that? Yeah, basically. Then he told that yeah, basically it's 100% correct. So assume that in this world basically there are 7 lakh cities, and 7 lakh experiment is basically ongoing in this city, and that is basically connected with power company, energy company, and the nuclear power plant. So what is going to happen in this experiment? That entire land is going to get unstable. So this basically is the data science project. Basically, you can say artificial intelligence project, which says that we have basically the list of each and every experiments, and this basically one of the biggest company that basically the TCS company told that Tata Consultancy Services, or I think Service, they told that they have the experiment data, that which country, sorry, which city is going to, and we have that Italy is a city also list name basically. That's why basically they are software company number one. So they basically have the matrix also of that when that entire land is going to become unstable. Because this comes to into artificial intelligence project. This comes into the artificial intelligence project. When the entire mountain basically is going to move to left side, move to right side. When entire buildings are going to move to right side, when entire building is going to move to right left side. How basically the entire seas basically is going to come inside the cities. That data basically the artificial intelligence project basically group basically have it. So like this basically this is the biggest business also basically you can say. The software company is doing the biggest business basically. They will say that, so basically this comes into the news business. What it comes into the news business, they give in advance the news that this is going to happen, so you give this much money. So basically they are basically doing the subscription also, like if you are basically doing the subscription in our channel, then basically you are going to get the news in advance so that you can escape from that area. So like this news channel basically says that we have the artificial intelligence software. So this basically connects to news channel basically. So just see basically how dangerous news channel people are. But they are basically covering the real news, right? This Italy basically they might be having the news, but they can't tell this to whole world, right? Otherwise, basically the world will say that we can sleep at the night basically, but it's not possible that we will wake up in morning. So that type of things are also there. That Italy city basically is the one of the biggest example basically you can say. Italy city is the biggest example. So what experiment they might be doing? They might be doing what experiment? Death experiment through water basically. The for example, what do you mean by death? Death means the person is going not going to take breathe, and his entire blood cells are going to become unstable, and is if basically the whole entire blood cells basically will become unstable, and so at that time basically his heart basically is going to stop. Heart is going to stop, right? So that basically few people says that heartbeats are also basically connected with set of stages. That one stage, second stage, third stage, like this basically they can also basically survive. Few people says that in front of the world he is died, but the second stage basically heart was basically not broken, so he basically survived that and he basically got second birth. So like these experiments are also there. Like these experiments are also there. So like this basically whole world basically is doing certain level of experiment. So that was the basically the reason was death. Death was the reason, right? So that's why basically through water also basically you can have a death. So Italy, that city basically was doing that experiment, that and that basically each and every human clone basically was connected with another software company, and in the CPU basically they were handling that each and every people's body. So assume that software company is also basically in Italy, because there is some, I think, some distance issue of each and for example, one person body basically is connected with one of the computer. Assume that one of the computer, and that computer is connected with one of the power company and energy company and nuclear power company. So that basically distance basically matters. Distance, for example, 100 up to 100 kilometer only basically that computer can send the data and pass the data. That also within fraction of millisecond. So that's why basically they were that each and every people basically were under the sea water, but they were basically alive in morning. Every morning basically, every night this happens. Every morning basically this happens. So like this, assume that there are basically 7 lakh. There are around, assume that around 7 to 8 lakh cities in this world. Just taking as an example, in real number, basically it might be 12 lakh, 15 lakh, it might be anything. But in real, basically, there are many cities basically which are not in the map also. So we are not taking in that cities also. So like this, basically around there are 7 to 8 lakh cities in this world, and each and every city basically are doing the experiments. Each and every city basically are doing the experiment. Like this, few people says the South Africa. In South Africa, there is one city basically. They are basically doing the experiment of HIV/AIDS. They are doing the experiment of HIV/AIDS, because once the person basically had HIV/AIDS, then basically it's very difficult to do the his antibiotic things basically from his body basically. So he keeps basically he has to keeps on having the medicine. Without medicine he can't survive. And that basically they are telling that we can do this in the without medicine basically also his body can have a normal life. That basically we can give this medicine through his power company basically, through oxygen power supply basically he can have that medicine. So like this basically how many diseases are there is world basically, which basically are automatically giving the power supply oxygen data to each and every person's body, to each and every person's body. Assume that like this there are basically around 3 lakh disease in this world, which basically is automatically getting controlled by the power company and the energy company and the nuclear power plant. Like this basically same South Africa basically that city told that we can basically give him the dose in the power in the form of the oxygen from the power company, from the energy company and from the nuclear power plant. So HIV AIDS antibiotic inside that power company and oxygen supply data. So like this basically they told that like this basically how many disease basically have you done the experiment. This was basically told to the South Africa people. Then they told that basically we have list of around 3 lakh diseases. We have a list of this 3 lakh diseases. We have list of these 3 lakh diseases, which basically is automatically coming from the power company, energy company, and from the nuclear power plant. So like this, basically, they has not told which power company, which nuclear power plant, which energy company is having this all 3 lakh disease data. They basically has not told this. But they told that we have the medicine of each and every antibiotic. We have the sand basically. From where basically we have basically created sand. We have created sand of that medicine. So that basically whenever basically you chemical company basically ask that what is the antibiotic, so they can basically just tell that yeah this is that sand basically where the antibiotic exists. So that basically they just have to collect that sand data and do the rest of experiments. So like these things are also there. Like this also things are there. So basically one of the person told that like this how many disease basically that basically was told to one of the satellite group basically like this how many disease basically you have done experiment till basically the earth planet has after basically after the earth planet has born. So they told that basically we have around 3 lakh diseases. Like this we have taken each and every disease basically in the oxygen power supply. Then he was basically shocked. He was shocked. He was basically shocked. Then basically he told that each and every object basically are connected with the power supply, right? Each and every object basically are connected with the power supply. So how many types of power supply the Earth planet is getting? They told that basically Earth planet is created from around 5 crore planets. So only 5 crore planet basically can give the power supply to the Earth planet. If the 5 crore Earth planet basically says that we are not going to give power supply to you, then Earth planet by suddenly basically will get unstable means the land is going to become unstable and each and every building basically will start get falling. But this will basically mostly will never happen, but it might possible because mostly this will never happen because if this will happen then basically the lots of planet are going to become unstable because earth planet is also chained with a set of planets. But then they told that basically we have the backup of 20 lakh earth planet. Then yeah, then basically he told yeah, yeah, that's it. That's why basically we are having 20 lakh Earth planet, sorry Earth planet copy in in this universe. If Earth planet basically also suddenly get disappeared, then also basically we don't have to worry basically because there are already 20 lakh people basically sorry 20 lakh Earth planet is basically existing in this world in this universe. We have taken the parts from the Earth planet only, and we have dumped into the other 20 lakh planets, and nobody was able to track also because higher power basically the universe group only basically gets. The nuclear power company basically don't have that much power basically which universe group basically have. So universe group basically have the more powerful they, so they basically knows that where the 20 lakh planet basically exist. So they told that basically assume that for one day basically they told that we basically do certain level of experiment for Earth planet also, that if Earth planet basically get disappeared, then what will happen. So that type of experiment also basically the universe group basically do. So they told, what is that experiment basically? Can you please explain that? Can you please explain that suddenly if Earth planet get disappear, so what experiment you are going here basically? So they told that basically Earth planet basically has created this 20 lakh planet from Earth planet, basically the Earth planet, from Earth planet people basically. For example, he told that when Mahabharat was existing, when the Mahabharat basically was there, that time basically the Krishna God was there. Krishna God basically nowadays the Krishna God is there. Sri Krishna ji. He told that there are basically Sri Krishna family basically, which are basically in one of the 20 lakh planet basically. Then another person told that basically the Sri Ram and Hanuman basically in Ramayana basically. That family basically also exists in one of the 20 lakh planet. Like this, many basically family has story has finished, and like this the planet has sorry the 20 lakh planet basically like this entire things are basically created. So he told that you do you have that 20 lakh planet story like this Ramayana, Mahabharata. Then basically he told that we need to ask to the Bollywood group basically, because this 20 lakh planet basically are supplying the power supply to Earth planet. According to that, the entire land basically is stable. Entire land basically is stable. Entire land basically is stable. That's why the entire land is stable. So he basically told that that's very dangerous. So in Earth land basically anything can happen. That is also basically fixed. That is also basically fixed. So he told that basically here that when assume that the entire Earth planet is going to end, so where basically the money is going to be. For example, Tata groups, Ambani groups, Mittal groups, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, where basically they are going to take that entire money. They told that basically every of our planet basically will end. Then where basically they are going to take the entire money? It's waste basically, you can say. But then basically he told that he basically given the example of that Italy city. That entire city basically is going underwater, and next morning basically it's coming out of from the water also. So this death experiment basically they are doing that from water basically up to what level the death ratio basically has to reach. For example, one person is inside the water, and up to what level basically he can survive. So for that basically the Italy city is there. For that basically Italy city is there basically. Italy city is there. Like this, the Italy city is there. For that basically the Italy city is doing the experiment. But the Italy city basically is knowing that, but no, basically how they will know, because the each and every human bodies are basically human cloned, and they are basically controlled by the set of computers. Whatever they basically write in that computer, that only basically they do. So their mind is not going to tell that basically what basically we were doing in last night, what basically we are doing in last night, what we were doing in evening basically last evening, where basically we were in the last evening, what basically we are doing the last evening, what basically we are doing in last afternoon, where basically we were in last afternoon. Like this basically they are not going to ask because they are human clones. whatever the computer is going to tell, that only basically they are going to say. So like this basically he told that there are Hanuman families also there, who are also basically staying in the set of planets. So like this he told that there are 20 lakh planets in the universe, 20 lakh planets in universe. Each and every planet is basically people's comes here, and they are basically the god of the planets. You can say the owner of the planet. They keeps on coming here, and they basically says that we are basically giving the oxygen. For example, Sri Ram family. Sri Ram family basically entire group basically is in the one of the planet of 20 lakh people, 20 lakh planets. So they basically keeps on coming here, and they says that we are basically, don't worry, we are basically sending you the oxygen power supply. So that entire group basically connected with the Sri Ram group, they are basically getting the oxygen power supply from that planets. Like this basically they give proof also that we are basically supplying the power supply to you. Don't do anything bad to any of the people, because they are ultimately going to suffer us only. For example, assume that one of the person of North India basically, he is basically in Bangalore, sorry, he is currently in Vadodara. He basically has done some bad to one of the person. His head basically got damaged, his basically eye basically got damaged, and something basically happened. And suddenly basically that one of the person basically he went to one of the temple, and he basically done the complaint. And he assumed that he was basically the uh, uh, god of basically one of the god, basically assume that he was basically one of the person of one of the god. So that time basically each and every temples basically are connected with the satellite groups. So satellite groups suddenly basically tracked his entire body parts energy, and they told that basically his head is and the eye was basically damaged by one of the North Indian person, and he was basically staying in Vadodara, Bangalore, sorry, Vadodara city. Like this basically the Sri Ram group basically from that 20 lakh one of the planet from 20 lakh, they basically suddenly basically done sparking of there was a light basically, that is basically told as bijli. Whenever basically the rain falls, that time basically the bijli basically sparks. That is called light sparking basically, you can say bijli basically. In Hindi basically it's called bijli, and English basically I think it's called light sparking only. That was the line basically from that planet and to that land basically, where that person basically has done the damage of that particular person. So he was basically in assume that in Vadodara or some any country basically. So that basically the spark basically happened. Spark basically happened. So like this basically the group basically who are sending the oxygen to the each and every caste basically, they are telling that we are basically sending you the oxygen power supply. So don't do any bad to any of the other people. So like this basically they given the hint to that particular entire caste. Otherwise, basically the 20 lakh planet basically suddenly will they say that basically we are not going to give the oxygen power supply, and suddenly basically the entire land basically got disappeared from the Earth planet, and entire the Earth planet basically got ended. But this will basically never happen. Why? This will basically never going to happen. Why basically this is not going to happen? There might be some reason, right? There might be some reason that they have basically created this all the people basically, they basically has created this all people, so there might be some reason basically, right? So they also might be doing some experiment like this. The Italy land basically is doing one experiment of the water depth basically up to what level that people can have that stop of death inside the water. That was also basically experiment, one of the experiment in Italy city basically, and nobody basically will know that. Why? Because each and every people basically are connected with one of the computer, and each and every space are basically connected with the one of the computers basically. So you can just see the power of the power basically of the software energy, basically the power of the software energy, basically they can clear the entire house within the 1 or 2 seconds, basically they can clear the entire house of this dirty waters, basically just within 1 or 2 seconds, basically. So this basically people say, sir, is this magic or it's what, basically? Is this magic or it's actually what? So like this things are there. So like this, assume that there are 7 to 8 lakh experiments which is basically ongoing in the Earth planet, in the Earth planet, done by certain groups, and they are basically keeps on doing the experiments. They are basically keeps on doing the experiments. So how basically you can say that, how basically the nuclear power company says that we are basically getting the power data basically from this all areas. We are basically getting the power supply from these all areas. Then one of the person basically told that we have created the states also. North city. So in North city basically the most of people are north. South city is there. There basically the most of people are south. Then east state is there, like this each and every people are of the east side. Like this the entire India basically has more than 28 states. So like this each and every states are also created. But each and every power company basically says that we have basically the each and every data dynamically. For example, one country basically person is going to another country. So he is basically taking the visa, giving the time that in this time basically we are going to that city, sorry, that country. So that country basically is having the data of that particular person. So power company basically is going to give the power supply to the person, basically like these things are also there. Like this basically there are many things basically which are basically connected. So like this basically assume that there are 7 to 8 lakh experiments which are basically ongoing on the earth planet. So basically earth planet is never going to end. Earth planet mostly will never get end on the base of this 20 lakh planets, which is Earth planet people only has created. Because whenever people dies, they basically go to the one of the planets. Whenever the basically Earth planet basically gets end completely, then basically that yug basically gets end, and they basically shift to that planets. Basically. Like this, basically many stories are there. Assume that there are basically more than 20 lakh stories in the universe of the Earth planet group. So that story basically connects to disease also, because each and every activities when you do that time basically your body generates the energies, and that basically gets effect to your body parts. That affects to your body parts because the blood cells equal to user stories, set of user stories. So just see basically up to what level the formula word basically is connected. The software company basically, the project management plan industry basically do the formula of each and every attributes up to what level basically. That's why basically it's the each attributes is connected with hundreds of balance sheets, basically they are it's connected with hundreds of balance sheet, it's connected with hundreds of balance sheet. So this is basically 216 part. In 217 basically we are going to discuss a little bit more about this.